Well, Theresa May must face some music in the House of Commons today after her Brexit negotiations broke down at the 11th hour over the Irish border dispute.
Former Northern Ireland Secretary and Brexiteer Owen Paterson joins us now alongside editor of the New European.
No, editor-at-large.
Yeah,
there's a real editor. Piers Mate's the real editor.
Yeah, Matt Kelly is editor of European.
Exactly right.
A fine paper.
Apologies, Matt.
If you don't agree with its direction.
Former Labour spin doctor Alistair Campbell, who of course worked with Tony Blair to get the Good Friday Agreement signed. And this, you think, is what is at stake here over the potential border between Northern Ireland and the European Union, which will be Ireland after Brexit?
I certainly think we're in a state now where, I think there's a lot more than that at stake. I think that the whole Brexit process is frankly unravelling, but I do think that the destabilisation of Northern Ireland and the potential to destabilise the peace process is very, very real. And I think it's just been waved away very, very airily. And just looking at the chaos that's been unleashed by one incident involving the DUP, when I think back to the number of times we had near moments of crisis because one part of the peace process, one piece of the jigsaw fell out, and I just have the impression that because they're so desperate actually to keep people like Owen happy, they're so desperate they're doing anything. And they went into what happened the other night when she went to Brussels. I mean, either they didn't do the basic work
with the DUP before going to Brussels.
You know these guys. You've spent hours, days, months, years negotiating with Northern Ireland politicians, right? They can get very intransigent in these things. Reading between all the ruins here, and it is ruinous at the moment, what's the way through this? How does this get resolved? Now that they've got it in their heads, Theresa May is quietly trying to basically break up the United Kingdom.
Well, I mean, I see what the other thing that Owen will know this from when he was Northern Ireland Secretary, that often happens is actually what the media and how the media are interpreting something is what can often cause the chaos. And that appears to be what happened here, because it was actually an RTE report that provoked the DUP and out they went, and suddenly all hell breaks loose. I think that, look, the DUP will fight for their own corner. I think they're a little bit confused at the moment as to what that is, but they will fight very, very hard. The one thing that you've got to remember is that if there's one set of politicians that they really don't want in power, it's a Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. So they won't necessarily want to bring the government down.
No,
but I think this thing is unravelling so fast, and the chaos that's being unleashed means that anything can happen.
And also, these are all unexpected. Well, I'm sure many of you would have expected this, but I think to people who might have voted for Brexit, this looks a little unexpected. I mean, we had a politician this morning on from the Ulster Unionist Party who's making the point that nothing can happen without the consent of people in Northern Ireland, but Northern Ireland voted to remain part of the European Union. I mean, this is ever so complex and is actually fracturing politics in Northern Ireland itself, which is dangerous.
Well, Northern Ireland was very divided, like the rest of the UK, on Europe. But to pick up Alistair's point, I mean, the whole peace process has been backed by both parties in London, Dublin and Washington, and that is not going to change. So Tony Blair built on the incredibly difficult decisions that John Major took, and we carried on, and we endorsed all the Belfast Agreement proposals, which we were trying to embed when I was there.
But it's threatened by the border between Northern Ireland and
if this chaos continues, Theresa May doesn't get a grip pretty quickly. Actually, the Good Friday Agreement could start to be threatened, because the DUP might walk away from this and go, you know what, stop this for a game of soldiers.
Yeah, no, where I don't agree with Alistair, I don't think the border is the contentious problem. There's still a border now. There's a currency border, there's an excise duty border.
What does that mean, though? You go backwards and forwards. That's what a free border means.
Yeah, but there is still a border, and the goods are checked on either side. Not that much, and with modern technology, you could easily actually resolve that.
Where is this modern technology? You keep saying it's about technology.
Come on,
where is it?
That has been very clearly stated in the government's paper in the summer, but above all by the head of HMRC, who gave evidence to the select committees. So the border is not the problem. The problem was this proposal in the draft document. I mean, I got a call. I was on the train about 20 miles outside Euston on Monday. I got a friend of mine in Northern Ireland, right, so you better go on the RTE website and see this. This is going to get them out in the streets. Because the idea that Northern Ireland have a separate regulatory regime, have some sort of quasi-separate status, colonial status, outside the rest of the UK is incredibly damaging with a large part of the community. So,
so what about the UK? What about David Davis saying that then the UK should have the whole of that?
Well, in which case this whole game is a complete waste of time because we want to leave
you don't get your Singapore.
No, we don't leave the single market. We don't get customers. We cannot do trade deals around the world. And don't forget, there's some really good companies in Northern Ireland who are absolutely world class who do
Here's
want
your
us.
problem.
They want us to leave the single market so we can do the trade deals.
Let's cut to the quick here. Theresa May is useless.
That's your statement. That's
no,
a very
it's
rude
what,
statement
about
Prime
most
Minister.
people now say.
She
and whether they all
got...
say it in public or not, everyone I'm talking to...
She's not respected.
Everyone I'm talking to around the Westminster scene just thinks she's a dead woman walking politically.
But she is the Prime Minister.
Do you agree with that or not?
No, she's got a...
You don't think she's useless?
No, she has got a pig of a job because... Although she got the second largest, largest number of votes after John Major, to get more votes than your guy ever got at the peak of his pomp. She did not get the number of seats in the House of Commons. So don't forget, we got a minority government. That is really difficult to get this through.
That means she doesn't have a mandate for the very specific hard Brexit that she put forward at the election. She went to that election saying, give me this and we'll have out the customs union, out the single market, out the ECG. I know, and that is, we can talk about Labour if you want. I'm not happy with them.
Hang on. Right. Over 80% of the voters voted for two parties.
I voted Labour.
Labour.
He voted Labour.
Yeah.
I didn't vote.
You don't know how I voted.
You told me how you voted.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
actually,
okay.
Well,
okay, all right, okay.
As always, Alistair, stop lying.
What was the lie? Sorry. Okay, he didn't vote Labour.
I voted Labour. No idea how I voted.
You're not Labour?
No.
Okay, all right.
Stop spinning. Stop lying.
Lots of people. Can we just leave Piers out of this for the minute?
Well, can we have a chat? You and I voted for parties.
Lots of people. Yeah, but I didn't vote to come out of the European Union. I voted to stop Theresa May.
No. You voted for the Labour Party, which made it very clear that the Labour Party was going to endorse the 17.4 million in the referendum who voted to leave. You voted to leave the single market. You voted to leave the customs union, and you voted to leave the ECJ. So the Labour Party is
that is a perfectly valid point he's making, isn't it?
But I voted for a party which had in its manifesto things I didn't disagree with.
Right.
I disagreed with.
Right.
And I, like a lot of people, Owen, I voted Labour because I saw it as the best way. I voted Labour for many reasons, but one of them was I saw it as the best way to stop Theresa May getting this mandate for a hard Brexit.
Hang on.
And millions of people did that, and that's why at the moment people are disappointed with the government and with the Labour
Having
Party.
said to you that your leader is useless, right, which many people think, actually a lot of people around Labour think that on this issue, Jeremy Corbyn has also been useless. He's not leading this properly. He's not set out a clear identity for where Labour stands on this. And so the country's looking at two effectively rudderless parties over this vital issue.
At the moment, Parliament, we're a parliamentary democracy, we have occasional referenda. This parliamentary democracy, Parliament is not remotely reflecting the debate in the country at the moment. Now, Owen was just saying to me, he goes around the place and everybody says to him, keep fighting, we've got to get out. I get the exact opposite. I think we do get our kind of echo chambers where we go. But what I'm absolutely sure about is that there are millions of people at the moment who feel that nobody's speaking up.
Right.
Yeah.
Why am I here having to debate this rather than Labour MPs are out saying this Brexit threatens the very people that they represent and we have to fight it?
Do you not think it would help if the Prime Minister was someone who was an enthusiastic Brexiteer, who'd actually thought about all of this and the consequences, and therefore we could have some confidence, knew what they were doing?
Well, we all know her position. She's made that clear, but she's also made it absolutely clear she wants to deliver what the 17.4 million people voted for.
But she didn't even believe in it. She didn't vote for it.
That doesn't matter. There are large numbers of people, like Alice, who still don't believe it, but he voted for a party, the Labour Party, which wanted to leave the single market, leave the customs union, and also the Court of Justice. So I think, to answer Piers' original question, it's fair for the Prime Minister to expect the Labour Party to support the government on the main issue. They've said, and they're all over the shop, Labour, they said they support the referendum result, and now they're dodging and diving. You've got some saying the single market, some of the shadow cabinet members the other way.
Yeah, but my issue, is you're all over the shop. That's the problem.
No, we are very
clear.
Right
now, I'm watching the Tory party basically splitting in two because the hard Brexit mob are clearly going to be very unhappy with the way Theresa May is trying to do a dirty little deal with the DUP to save her own neck. That's what's really going on.
No, it's not a dirty deal. It's been very public and open, and the DUP's views have been completely clear on this.
The DUP is now controlling the British government.
Well, these guys are doing a pretty good job of that as well.
I entirely agree with the DUP's position on this. You cannot have a separate regime for Northern Ireland. That's why this guy rang me up from Northern Ireland when I was on the train, saying this is going to be really divisive. And going to be on
How
the
does it end?
Well, I feel she's been incredibly generous. She made a very generous speech in Florence, and she's been rebuffed. They were churlish about that. Well, I think there's a point when she, as Ian Duncan Smith said yesterday, I think there's a certain point you say, look, sorry, guys, you're not prepared to talk about free trade. The best end is we have a free trade deal with zero tariffs.
Walk away?
And if necessary, we say we are going to double. Alistair, come on. We could go to WTO terms. The USA and India.
So we leave with no deal.
Then we have a border.
No, it's not.
It is not.
What you're saying,
it is not.
Short version of what you said is no deal.
It is not no deal.
It's
a global deal.
Well, yeah, but that's no deal.
It's not. It's not no deal.
It's no deal with Europe.
It's not. It's what the USA and India sells into Europe.
It's no deal with Europe, right?
USA and India sell more into Europe than we do faster.
But is it no deal with Europe?
And then you have to have a border.
If they flat, despite wanting to trouser all this money, if they will not sit down,
you don't fix the border question and you end up with a border.
I mean, the tragedy is, and you're right, Piers, everywhere you go, you get people saying, where is the leadership on this? Right. Where is this government going? What are they trying to do? And the reason for that, we now have two tails wagging the dog. We have the DUP and we have Owen and a very small number now of Brexit MPs. I call them Brextreamers because I think they are. Yes, you are driving the government agenda. And I think she actually, I know she's in a difficult position, she's got a terrible job, he called it a pig of a job, it is a pig of a job, and the numbers aren't good for her.
Well, you know what?
She has to stand up to them.
Diddums. You don't want to be Prime Minister and lead the country.
No, I'm not giving you sympathy, I'm just saying
I'll go in there now, I don't care how difficult a job it is.
No, Piers,
we need leadership.
They don't want you.
It's time.
Piers, this is the classic view of the establishment.
I'm not establishment.
Yes, you are. You are the absolute epitome of the establishment.
Look at you.
How are you not the establishment?
You interview Prince William for GQ. That's how established you are.
I know you were jealous about that.
Even you, an anti-monarchist,
European magazine.
At the seat.
Outside Westminster and London.
If
I'm on trains, people come up to me the whole time and say, we are going to do it.
I know, the trouble is, you're both going on trains with only your supporters on. Let me ask, I want to ask something else. Alistair, before we let you go. Donald Trump, overnight, is going to recognise Jerusalem as Israel's capital, right? Going to move the US Embassy there. How significant is that move, and what are the problems associated with it?
Well, I mean, look, we talk about people playing around with peace processes. I'm afraid I think this falls into that category.
Can you explain why it's so contentious?
Well, because of the shared claim over Jerusalem and the significance to both Israel and Palestinians. And it's very much, look, we know where he stands on the issue, but I think in terms of upsetting a pretty delicate balance, it's Trump doing what Trump does, is making it all about him as opposed to being about the issue.
Well, he's making it all about Israel, and he's made no secret that he
that's true.
Is on. He's firmly with Benjamin Netanyahu. It's a position he's had for a long time.
But I think to do this, well, put it this way, I think it's a deliberately provocative move, and I think I'm not sure that it's thought through. And it does actually remind me, back to Ireland, when Theresa May did this deal with the DUP. I've never got round this problem that one of the terms of the Good Friday Agreement is that if the peace process institutions are in crisis, which they are when they're not standing, then the British and Irish governments become the negotiators. Now, how can you negotiate evenly, fairly between the unionist and the nationalist community when you are totally dependent on them?
Owen, how would you take my £1,000 bet to charity that Theresa May's gone by April as leader?
Nobody, I can tell you, absolutely guarantee, nobody in the Tory party in Parliament wants a leadership conference.
You take my bet?
No, absolutely. No,
1,000.
I'm not having a bet.
Charity your choice. You can help all sorts of charities here.
Asking.
Come on, just till April, every 4 months.
I'm asking, can you name a single Tory MP that wants a...
I'm not saying, I'm not doubting you for a moment. Contest. Where's your hand?
What we wanted to do is to deliver what was in the Florence speech.
Gone by April.
No, I'm not taking easy bets on a
sometime. What about Wenger out, Piers? How's that going?
No, he'll still be here in 45 years. He'll be here in 45 years' time, still losing. He's the Alistair Campbell of football managers.
Well, he stole one at Burnley, I'll tell you that.
Well, I let the record show you did not take my bet, even though you apparently think everyone agrees with you.
Had I been advising you, Owen, you did the right thing there.
Yeah.
Alistair, Owen, thanks very much indeed.
I'm glad we ended on a point of mutual
spirit. I know,
there.
it all feels very disruptive.
It's terrible, Susan.
It is terrible.
And you will come up full support for Jeremy Corbyn.
The last person on earth who would ever cause this kind of disruption is Alistair Campbell.